Professor Ogenga Otunnu was in his youthful days when he fled the country in 1984 to exile. But then he was guild president at Makerere University. Once in exile, he took an academic scholarship to become professor specializing in history and forced migration. He is the co-founder of the Center for Forced Migration Studies at Northwestern University. He has lectured at the summer program on refugees and forced migration at the Center for Refugee Studies at York University for 15 years. He currently teaches at DePaul University, Chicago, the largest Catholic university in the United States. On the spot tonight is Professor Otunnu. Professor Ogenga Otunnu, welcome to the show. You're on the spot tonight.
Well, thank you for hosting me.
You specialize in immigration studies, and the United States has just emerged out from an election where President-elect Donald Trump, in fact, whipped, his supporters into using this issue of migration, and those sentiments have brought him into power. How can you, as a scholar, advise those vulnerable migrants who could be moving around the world in Europe and the United States, and they find these ultra-conservatives?
Well, I think what is unfolding, at least in the United States, is part of a global phenomenon where there is intense anti-refugee, anti-immigrant sentiment. And with the harrowing effects of globalization, the increasing demographic power of minorities in some various societies, United States of America, we see now the reemergence of white supremacies. But with United States of America, as you know very well, was constructed largely on white supremacy. The extermination of indigenous people as the first phase of that, and then enslavement of black people. So it's been that, and it's unfortunate that Trump appealed to those sentiments, and the effects have been devastating. We have children who go to schools, immigrant children go to school in the United States, who immediately after the elections were not even able to go to school anymore, because they were scared that if they went to school, by the time they got back home, their parents would have been expelled. And so there is anxiety, there is fear that is tearing apart the immigrant population in the United States.
What should the world expect of a Donald presidency, but also the rise of such ultra-conservatives in Europe and other parts? What should we expect that is likely? Are we likely to see a real shift, maybe to take us back to the 1945-39 kind of time?
Unfortunately, in terms of Donald Trump's policies, no one really knows at the moment. No one knows whether he actually will carry through with his what he put forward during the election. But globally, that sentiment is there. But to be fair, though, the anti-immigrant, anti-refugee sentiment is not limited to only Europe, United States, and North America. We also have it here in Africa. We see the tendencies to close borders.
We are the largest recipient of refugees in the region, almost close to 1 million people from South Sudan, from Burundi, from Eritrea, from Ethiopia, here in Uganda. So at least here we are welcoming.
That is tremendous. That is tremendous. And I think the government of Uganda, the people of Uganda, must be applauded for that. But we see next door forced repatriation of refugees in contravention of international law. We see borders being sealed when people flee persecution. We see more and more people who are violent, uprooted, caged in the same hostile environment where they become victims.
Is that in reference to the Dadaab camp in Kenya?
Yes, that the forced deportation is one of them.
But they have stayed that now?
Well, delayed it for a while. The government of Kenya, which for a long time provided tremendous assistance to refugees, has now decided that the camp has to close down. and the majority of the refugees are likely to be expelled, be sent back to Somalia.
Look, back here in Uganda, you left Uganda in 1984. At that time, you were guild president at Makerere University. And what prompted you to leave the country?
Before we had a strike at the university, and the strike focused on a number of issues. One was the increased terror and intimidation, harassment of students, staff and faculty who were not considered to be supportive of the government. And they were being terrorized by various security agencies. And then two, we had very pronounced mismanagement of funds at the university. And so we came together as students and demonstrated against it. I remember going to a number of embassies, asking them to withhold development assistance to the government of Uganda until and unless it began to observe and protect human rights across the board. And so when the strike was underway, I was picked up with two other colleagues, locked up at the Central Police Station, detained without trial until we took the government to court, and we were then released on bail. I went back to Makerere to do my exams, and immediately I finished my examination, I fled the country. I left with one of the best politicians in Uganda, Adoniya Tibironda, really open-minded person. We fled on the same plane. He was going to the UK to represent the scouts in Uganda, but he also knew that he was fleeing the country. So I sat with him and his wife.
That was his opportunity to leave?
Yes, I sat with him and his wife for the entire trip to London. And that is how I left. I went to the UK, and then I registered as a refugee and stayed with my brother, Professor Mee, in Oxford. And I was called back to Uganda when General Tito Okello took over power. And I had worked earlier on specific issues with the Democratic Party, Evaristo Nyanzi and others.
Your brother was heavily involved in the government of General Tito Okello, is that right?
Yes.
So could that have been the reason how you found it very easy to come back? I'm talking about Ambassador Otunnu.
Not really. I came back because a segment of the Democratic Party that was now involved in Tito Okello's government wanted me to come and help them reorganize what they claimed to have been their fighting men as part of the peace negotiation that was taking place in Nairobi. So I came and I agreed to work with them, and then I realized that the entire process was extremely messy. There was lack of transparency and honesty
on the part of the Okello regime, or both?
On the part of almost all the stakeholders, all the players, and so I withdrew from it, and then left Uganda before Museveni came to power. I went back to the UK, and then left the UK. Went to Kenya, and started working in Kenya for a while before I went to Canada.
Okay. You have returned to Uganda 32 years later. Okay, maybe you came back again, but 32 years later after you fled Makerere University, when you look back at your alma mater, things they seem never to have changed. The situation seems to be the same. Does that frustrate you, in a way, anger you?
Yes, the institution is really good. It's a great institution.
I'm talking about the fights, and I mean the strikes, and you know.
Well, I think we have had many more strikes in the past a few decades than we had when I was in Makerere. But I think the government should at least try to fund the institution the way it should be funded. We have some of the best brains that teach at Makerere University, extremely productive, and the students are fairly competitive. But without enough resources coming from the government, you know, the crisis is going to reoccur, which is unfortunate. So because basically my understanding is this has a lot more to do with lack of funding. And lack of funding, to some extent, you know, reflects the very limited nature of our revenue, but also reflects the pervasive nature of corruption, which then drains the resources which would have otherwise been invested in education, in healthcare, in other important segments of society.
That's what you see at Makerere.
That is my perception.
What do you make of politics in Uganda, the leadership and governance? Does it remind you of those years of 1984, Okello, Idi Amin, and maybe Dr. Bote?
I think one can almost draw that fairly marked continuity in the history of Uganda in terms of crisis of legitimacy, political violence, almost from the time when the state was constructed. It was constructed not to protect the citizens of Uganda. It was constructed as a predatory state, a criminal state. It was inherited.
The state is criminal by nature in most cases, isn't it?
Well, let me agree with you. It was when it was constructed was criminal. There was an attempt, at least when Obote came to power, to try and make the state function to at least get some sense of legitimacy. But that experiment collapsed at the moment we got to the Lost Counties referendum, and then the state became what it was again. And then we see it when Amin came to power. And then when Obote again, the UNLF administration came to power, the UNLF actually was a failed state, completely failed state. Essentially warlord states with different warlords controlling territories, and then we go to the election which was rigged. There's no doubt about it. It wasn't, in my opinion, rigged perhaps to the extent that some suggest. And then the state became what it is again. But it was a functional state in the areas where the government had support, where there was peace. In the Luwero Triangle, it was a genocidal state. In West Nile...
Who was committing the genocide in Luwero?
By and large, it was the government of Uganda. By and large, it was the government of Uganda doing the same thing in West Nile. By and large, it was the government of Uganda then doing the same thing in Western Uganda.
Your brother thinks otherwise. Seated on this chair sometime back, he thinks otherwise.
No, well, he thinks otherwise.
I'm talking about Ambassador Otunnu.
I don't know whether he thinks otherwise, but I think...
on the who committed what you call those genocidal tendencies you're talking about?
No, there was that element of... We had genocide in Uganda during the colonial period, more so concentrated in Bunyoro. We had genocide, Obote one did not, there was no genocide. Idi Amin regime amounted to form of genocide against Acholi and Langa. Obote two, there was genocide really in my opinion, because genocide here not only defined not in terms of publicly declared intent, but systematic actions that amount to intent. When you know that what you're doing over a period of time results in extermination of population. And what happened in Luwero Triangle, I was there. I took my colleagues from Makerere University to Luwero Triangle, and I cried. I cried in part because I'd been a refugee before in Kenya. I came back home and seeing Ugandans, completely terrorized, violated. There was mass rape. There was confiscation of property. It doesn't matter what narrative one wants to buy into. The facts are there that that was a genocidal regime in Uganda, Luwero Triangle, in West Nile region, whereby there were so many embassies Ugandans were declared from West Nile to have belonged to Amines. They were now Amines people.
Okay, but now, what? Because my earlier question is the comparison between now. So what has been consistent in your view? That the things you saw in 1982, 84, 85, you still see them today? What are these?
Then the NRM takes over power. The state, which was a failed state when Tito Okello was in power, it was a failed state. The government manages to bring the state back to life. The state begins to protect and provide opportunities for people in many parts of Uganda. It was not the case for a while in eastern Uganda, in Teso, for example. It was not the case for a long time, over 20 years in northern Uganda.
Because of the insurgencies in those two regions?
Yes.
And particularly northern Uganda?
Yes, insurgency, and so one has to focus on the role of non-state actors in the atrocities committed, but also one has to focus on the role of the state. And so one sees continuity there, that the state function here in Kampala, for example, people continue with life as things were normal, and people were making progress. In Acholi, people were caged in camps, withering away, dying in large numbers. And so, but the point here is that there are things that have changed, and changed in a positive way, but there are many things that haven't changed, and not until perhaps we begin to cultivate a sense of legitimacy, accountability, based on rights and social justice.
Professor, again, hold on to your point there. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I'll be drilling deep to know, because it was earlier reported that Professor Ogenga supported Dr. Kizza Besigye in the 2006 election, yet his own brother, 2011 election, yet his own brother, Professor Ogenga Otunnu, was running in the same election. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest tonight is Professor Ogenga Otunnu. I'm told in 2011 you chose to support Dr. Kizza Besigye of FDC instead of your brother. What informed this decision, by the way, which you are inherently entitled to take? But if you could just tell us deeper.
Well, I think the interview was manipulated. What I did indicate was that if opposition political parties wanted to offer a credible challenge to the NRM, it would be important for them to come together, and come together under the leadership of the most popular opposition leader, and that leader at the time happened to be Besigye. So that's all I said.
That was understood to mean an endorsement for Dr. Besigye.
Well,
or what is it? Isn't it?
Well, but this is what I'm saying. If you want to, okay, if you want to offer a credible challenge to the regime, there are a number of things you should do. And I was literally repeating what the opposition parties were themselves at least articulating, but they were unable or unwilling to affect them. Okay, and I told them, I said, look here, you know, come together, operate under the most popular leader of the opposition, Dr. Besigye, and to be honest with you, I think Besigye has played an important role in Ugandan politics in trying to open up this space. And I hope and pray that the president will also understand that by opening up this space, by allowing for conversation, by creating an environment in which there will be dialogue, it helps protect the government, it protects the legacy of the president, it provides delivery of services to our people, it allows our people to get more engaged in politics in our country. It'll be a win-win situation.
At that time, was that the kind of also advice you would give to your own brother? That if you want to really provide a credible challenge, give support to Dr. Besigye?
I didn't say that to my brother.
But that's what it meant also.
Yes. But I think this is politics 101. Okay, if you are fragmented, you lack resources, The limited resources you have, you duplicate. You can't go very far. Okay, and the only way you can at least make a difference, not necessarily winning, you may win elections. If you don't win election, you at least exert pressure on the system, is by coming together.
Let me shed a light on your family, if I can. You are in the academia, lecturing at Northwestern University, DePaul, and York University. Ambassador Otunnu has been also lectured at some of the universities, missed by a whisker to become Secretary General of the United Nations. Your other brother is also lecturing at some of the prestigious universities in the world. When you were do you ever get time to meet in Muchweni, in your village? And what do you talk about? Do you talk about the UN charters and things like that? Is this a normal conversation?
We are very humble. We are very humbled by God's grace and blessings. That the good Lord opened a few doors for us. Mm-hmm. Not that because we were better than other people, but by God's grace. And so that's a humbling experience. We discuss all sorts of things in our family. We discuss politics, and we engage in the discussion the way perhaps if one walked into our conversation, you may think the brothers are fighting. But that's the way we were raised in our family. Our parents allowed us to debate issues, and so that's what we do. We don't talk about the UN Charter. No, we don't.
But your father had a doctorate in theology or something like that. He was also a doctor of sorts.
It was awarded to him. He studied theology later on when he went to exile, and because of his of the work he did in preaching the gospel globally, when he went to I think he went to Japan and then later to Korea to preach. The university came around and said, you know, you've already earned a doctorate. Okay, and but he was humbled by that. His mission in life was to try and at least preach the gospel, to provide space and voice for those who are at the margins of society, and that's what my parents did.
And I'm told he also preached to the late Archbishop Jananomo. Is that true?
Yes. When my understanding was that when Saint Janani now was joining a school of theology, his family was left with my parents, and yes, it was my dad who preached the gospel to him, just as we had part of the East African Revival movement, in which a number of people from Uganda, for example, went to the north and converted people into Christianity and part of the revival movement then.
Let's now shed a light into the greater Acholi sub-region, which was in that war for 20 years, and people living in camps, and now they've gone back. There's the land issue of people talking about the land has been grabbed, and so what is the case like?
Well, it's we are grateful that the war is over. We are grateful that people are beginning to nurse their bleeding wounds. It's still unfortunate that the type of assistance required to help people again become productive, gain their dignity as human beings is not there. But the land issue is a difficult one. In part because when people were kept in camps, there was the perception, and one can say it was objective, someone can say it was subjective. There was the perception that part of the strategy of taking people into camp, which the government indicates that it was intended to provide protection to people. There are others in Acholi, the majority it seems, that would say that no, it wasn't that. But there was this perception that part of whatever was happening was to grab the land.
What does Professor Ogenga say?
Okay, let me provide you first the lived experiences of the people who were on the ground. Okay, so there was that perception, and one can debate it, But then again, people were very anxious about it, that their land was going to be taken away from them. And then they leave the camps, they go back home. And then you have people who claim to be well connected with government. Some of them come from the same area, who seized land that belonged to other people. And then we saw the investors being taken to the north. And in the perception of the people was that, look here, this is what the government wants to do. The government wants to take away our land. In my suggestion here is that given the history of the conflict in the area, where trust has been lost, it was butchered between the inhabitants of the territory and the government. One way of bridging the gap is to understand that people who haven't recovered fully, people who have nothing left in their hands, and the only thing that is left in their hands is the land, can become very anxious when the same government that's trying now to build trust in moves in without necessarily consulting with them, okay, to bring in investors, investors which are perceived to be not investors. So I think you know, it makes sense for the government to step back a bit and to find a way of engaging the community. Explain to the community what it wants to do, and to recognize that the champions of development in an area are the ordinary people, and let them tell the government what they want to do with that land.
So do you consider these as good initiatives being taken in northern Uganda, well-intentioned, but maybe finding an area where there's a deficit of trust for the government?
There is a profound deficit of trust, and it is unfortunate, in my opinion, that perhaps those who have been advising the government did not understand the context, did not understand the history of the society itself, because it can be a win-win situation, and it has to be that, okay, people are desperate in the north. People want to emerge out of that crisis. The government is providing support, should provide more support. The government should engage in dialogue with them. And if there's dialogue, that matter can be resolved. You know, there's no need for the government or some people in government to declare that they're experts on what people need. They're expert on the path to development, and therefore they have to impose their knowledge or their worldview on the ordinary people. Let the president go down for a second, maybe let the president disregard some of his lieutenants on the ground and say, here I am, let me go and talk to ordinary people. This is what I think we should do as a country. What do you people here think we should do? Okay, the possibility for a dialogue exists. Okay, and I think it is important for the government to do that. I mean, my family lost land. We are trying to reclaim land.
Lost it to who?
In Nwoya, there were people who claimed to have connection with government. Who did not. We bought the land. We stayed on the land. We developed it from 1980 to until the war occurred. And the neighbors, people who own land in the area, the Wilson Lotara, Onego Bell, Jacarea Loom, these are big farmers in the area, all know the land belongs to us. But out of nowhere, some of the people were able to acquire paperwork, went to land office, and they would say that instruction came from above. You know, I grew up in a Christian family. When we talk about above, we talk about heaven coming from God. Okay, but I think in our context in Uganda, it means it's coming from the government. That instruction came from the government that they should generate paper, okay, for people who had no paperwork at all. Okay, now they claim the two farms. One is about 5,000 acres. The other one is about 4,500 acres. We have most of the paperwork. And I did earlier on contact the government. Actually, I sent a note to the president to allow his office to help mediate, because the other option is to take legal means. But
are you considering that?
Maybe later, because my approach, and I'm doing this on behalf of my family, and I've been given the authority to do it. Perhaps the next year someone else in the family will do it. My approach is been that, which my family has approved, is to reach a settlement, negotiate a settlement. There are things that the court cannot resolve. There are issues that are, if they are social, they are political in nature, the court won't, because it becomes a zero-sum game. There's a winner and there's a loser. Okay, but when we negotiate, I'll say, okay, fine, maybe you want some pieces of land, we'll give you some. Okay, we'll take the rest. And what we're engaging in now is negotiation. I asked the president to offer his office, and some of the people from the president's office were extremely helpful. Nothing has happened so far. I requested a meeting with the president, because each time I try even to work on the war debt claims, which, you know, people lost things. We lost, my parents had 4 buses. They were seized. One of them was taken by the NRA. Right here at Dakar was parked in front of Tito Kelo's house. The tractors were taken. Our houses were blown up. There were no insurgency at the moment, at the time. I'm not.
So this was political persecution.
It was political in nature. I'm not trying to bring that again into life. I think we have to learn from the past. I am at a stage whereby I'm willing to negotiate. We have our evidence. We have verifiable evidence of the things which were seized, destroyed by the government. And I wrote to the president and said, look here, I'm willing to negotiate with you the best possible offer you can make, because part of the compensation is going to be plowed back in the community. We had built schools, we had built clinics, we had built churches. My family did that. To continue with the legacy of my parents, the legacy of my brother Ogenga Otunnu, we will do the same thing. We again, when we left Uganda, we went to Kenya in exile in the 70s. We came back, found many orphans. My family took care of orphans, which is part of being here on earth. We are willing to use part of this to do the same thing.
But assuming they have invested a lot of money in that land and billions of shillings, and if they have to give it to you back, then you have to compensate them. Will you have the means to do that?
No, we're willing to negotiate. Okay. Okay.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, I will be giving you the opportunity you to call us and ask Professor Ogenga Otunnu whatever question you could be having on the issues of northern Uganda, the current leadership and governance challenges we may be facing, or even the migration problems in Africa and even across the world. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Kamara, and my guest tonight is Professor Ogenga Otunnu. Ugandans, have had a tumultuous past, peppered with anarchy and bloodshed. What do you think is best suited to, if I may say, midwife peace and reconciliation for Uganda? And maybe heal what some people still say, there's that north-south divide, or maybe you don't see the divide.
No, the divide exists, but when we talk about north-south divide, we flatten the south, we flatten the north, and we pretend that the north is one group, the south is one group. There are tensions, there are contradictions within the south, there are tensions, contradictions within the north. But I mean, I think the point is, you make a good point that the way we have lived our lives since independence is that today I'm in power and you are uprooted, displaced within our country, or you become a refugee, or you wither away in poverty. Tomorrow you come to power, I'm either exiled within my country or exiled outside, or I wither away in poverty. So we have been doing this in turn. And at the end of the day, it is the country, it is the ordinary people who are the losers. There is need, based on the reality of our history, for the groups, all the stakeholders, to step back, provide space for dialogue, understand that this is not going to, it cannot be a zero-sum game. I win and you lose, and I'm urging the president to take a lead in that direction. That the only way to protect his legacy, to protect his vision about the country, the contributions made to the country, the only way that the aspiration of people who are dying in poverty, are dying without health care, can be met, is by us creating that space, is by us seeing the humanity of the other, is by the president opening up space to talk to Besigye and others. To the Besigye also, for them to understand that this is not a zero-sum game. Okay, human lives are involved in this. If we don't reach a negotiated settlement, we don't work together as a country, the ruling class will always flee out of the country. They put money on accounts overseas. It's the ordinary people, whether they're in northern Uganda, in western Uganda, eastern Uganda, that continue to suffer.
Today, in fact, there was more or less a fight in Kabarole. Armed insurgents, attacking people in areas around the Rwenzori mountain, which means, and those have been happening for quite some time, since the days of the ADF. But who can be the lead, let's say, for this negotiation? Who can chair it? Who can be the neutral person that is respected by both sides? Ugandans, or, elders from other countries in Africa? What could be the ideal solution?
I think this can be done within our country by our own people. It's just a matter of people reflecting critically. The president should sit down. You see, the president used to be very critical. Maybe he's still very critical. When he was a student at Dar es Salaam University, when he was leading the insurgency war, when he had just assumed power, okay, I still believe that he is critical. He's able to understand.
So that man you saw or heard about at the university, that man you had when he was taking office in 1986, in your view, is he still the same man?
The point I'm making now here, I understand your question. The point I'm making here is, there is, let us say, perhaps the president, like anybody else, you have many bodies, but there is that part of the body of the president that is, I hope, is still there. I know is still there. All he has to do is to hold on to that, and the other people, too, the other parties, to also see the humanity, see Uganda as a country, see our people who are dying, because most of the time the conflict, at times it is structural in nature. We understand, but those who they late tend to complicate it. So I'm going back to your question. We can do it locally. The president should do it. I pray and ask him to do it, to understand that this country is more than one person. Those who are in opposition, I'm praying, I'm asking them to step back, to find a way we can do it. We can meet with the government can meet with the opposition. They must do it. They have to do it for the people of Uganda. Because those who suffer are, you see an old woman in Kampala holding a broom in her hand, sweeping the street.
I don't know whether you get this, because when you go back into our villages, people are still, like you are your brother's keeper, those poor people. But when you see the elite, those who are in power, they have lost that touch of Ubuntu, the humanity part. So, and yet they're the ones who are supposed to bring us together and form a dialogue. Can it happen?
No, it can happen, but your observation is quite right. We see most of the time we focus on the conflict in our country. the tension in our country. We lose sight of the generosity of the humanity in our country, which are constantly, we see those in our ordinary people. Someone doesn't have salt, the neighbor offers salt. A child is sick, the neighbor will try to lend money to treat. Ordinary people in Uganda do precisely what the state should do.
So how can the ordinary people be, smarter than those who are running the affairs of our country, almost in every sphere?
In one sense, I don't know whether I'm answering your question, but in one sense, the more, you know this very well, the more you study, the more you know, you find out that you know so little. In other words, the elites should be very humble. But oftentimes, because we have degrees, we think we are the experts. The real professors are the ordinary people who have the lived experiences. So
they're lacking elements of humility
and
being modest.
They have the lived experiences. They have the vision, the foresightedness. Their vision might be limited to their own enclave. And that is whereby those who perhaps have gone to school a bit longer may come into help there. But I think we can learn from ordinary people. And that's why I'm asking, and I know that somewhere even, we have leaders who are very corrupt. We can assure them as a country, as ordinary people, that whatever you have embezzled, okay, nobody will come after you. In one sense, we are embracing impunity. But the reality here is, if you do not embrace it for now, there'll be no end to it.
I want to open the line so that you at home, you can ask a question or two to Professor Ogenga. And he's talked so many things, and he's a man with a wealth of experience on the issues of governance and leadership and migration.
Hello?
Yes, I have a call online. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
My name is Edward, and I'm watching from Soroti.
Edward, you're on air, sir. Tell us what you have to say tonight, or your question.
Yes. I just wanted to ask Professor, what does he comment about the unutilized land in Dokoro, Nwoya, and Gulu, the whole of that stretch of Lango and Acholi, which can be beneficial to the indignity of the community, other than inviting in the foreign investor?
Thank you. Unutilized land in those areas. Thank you very much. Let me take another call online. Thank you. He will be responding to you. Let me look for another caller. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Chintari.
What's your name? Go for it, sir.
I'm asking the professor. I'm asking him. Sembatia Isa.
Sembatia, your problem is that you have left your TV volume high, and so you are hearing an echo, and it is confusing you. So I ask the next caller to turn down the volume so that you don't get an echo, so that we can have a healthy conversation. So let me pick another call online. Hello.
Okay, I think I've turned down my volume.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Go for it, sir.
I've turned down my volume.
Okay.
Calling from Hoima.
What's your name, sir?
My name is William.
William, go for it.
Okay, and I come from Papuat, actually.
Okay.
And I would like to ask the professor, is he aware of the tribe called Junam? Who are the true owners of the land east of the Nile that they actually are now claiming? We have Ogenga Latigo, now we have Ogenga Otunnu claiming that land, which actually ancestrally belongs to the Junam people, Jonam people.
Wow, you have put him right there. I can see you putting him right there. Okay, thank you, William from Hoima.
Wait.
Yes.
Like Onego Bell is from Junam.
Uh-huh.
Does he know about the Yunam people?
Okay, you have made your point, William, in Hoima. Let me pick two more callers online. Hello? Hello? I have a call online. Hello?
Hello,
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
my name is Jimmy Wamimbi.
Where are you calling from, Jimmy?
I'm calling from Kisasi.
From Kisasi. Go, you're on air, sir.
I'm a human rights activist from Makerere University.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Professor, for sharing your lived experience and insights. Hello?
Yes, you're on air. Go right ahead.
Yeah, it's regrettable that Professor's family, like many other families in northern Uganda, faced the wrath that befell northern Uganda, and he's seeking for compensation for family.
Mm-hmm. Go right ahead if you're still on air.
Yeah,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I would like to find out from Professor what is his take on reparation in northern Uganda and other parts of Uganda that were affected by different armed conflicts in the absence of legislation and policies supporting it.
Thank you very
Is it
much.
possible? Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Your question is being... Let me take just one more caller so that the professor can respond to you all. Hello.
Hello,
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
I'm Richard from Soroti.
I'm sorry, your name again?
Hello,
Your name again, sir?
I'm calling from Soroti.
Okay.
I'm Richard.
Richard in Soroti. Go right ahead, sir.
Now, mine is education system of Uganda is a bit not good.
Okay, we lost Richard online from Soroti there. He was talking about Section 50. I don't know whether it was the meaning of the Constitution or or Article 50 or something like that. All right, but we have quite a couple of questions there. Go for them, Professor Guy.
Well, thank you very much for the questions posed. The question about whether the indigenous people who own the land, in many instances, these are customary land.
Vast and empty.
Yes, know best what to do with the land as opposed to the investors who are brought from outside. I think yes,
You really believe this?
yes,
That the indigenous people can know best to use they cannot, seek support from the outside, or the outsiders should lead the way in bringing development?
What I'm saying here is the indigenous people who own the land remain the most important people when one deals with the land. Their interest must be supreme. But this is not a question of either or. The indigenous people in the territory, in the area, will require some assistance in terms of capital, in terms of mechanization, forms of investment, which the government can come in to supplement, or the government can bring in investors. Investors would then negotiate with the people on the ground, and the terms must favor the indigenous people, and the ownership of the land must remain in their hands. Okay. So we can do both. Okay, we can spur up development, mechanize the area, meet the interests of ordinary people, meet the development interests of the government. We can do both. Now there's a caller his question focus on the territory, the land that he says belong to the Jonam. As a matter of fact, Ogenga Otunnu is my neighbor, our neighbor in that territory. His land is about as ours. I think he raised an important question about the question of ownership of the land. There will always be some contest. In
Noya.
In Noya. Okay. And ownership of land can be, the contest can be almost anywhere in the country. I think it is important, if there is conflict over that piece of land, for ordinary people in the area to try and come together, working through existing leadership structure, elders, interfaith organization, and then the government should assume is one of its central roles, that is to mediate conflict in society, okay, to come in and assist the community reach a settlement.
I think what the caller is trying to maybe insinuate is that the land in question maybe belongs either to the Jonam or the Acholi community around Nwaya. And he just wanted to know whether you can dissect and say, well, that part is for Jonam or Acholi.
No, I can't. But if there's contest, if there's conflict, and there has been conflict over that.
But you know, when you say you can't, there are people listening to you now and they feel betrayed.
That what?
If you say you cannot say for sure that this is Jonam land or Acholi land,
no, I'm just,
there are those listening to you now and feel betrayed because the problem they think you know.
No, I'm being honest to you, very honest with you. There are things I know, there are other things I don't know. What I know for sure is that there's conflict over that territory. And what I can suggest is that whenever there's a conflict, and conflicts erupt anywhere in families and in other spaces, if the conflict is there, there's a need for the elders to come together in the communities. There's a need for religious leadership to come to bridge the gulf, for the state to play its role.
Okay, there was another question from student at Makerere.
I think the question of compensation. I totally agree with my colleague who clearly indicated that we have had these moments in our history, sad moments in our history, where various parts of the country have been ravaged by war. People's properties were seized, confiscated, destroyed. And the question is, should the state compensate people? I think in the context of northern Uganda, for example, in the context of eastern Uganda, in the context of the Luero Triangle, and also in the context of part of western Uganda, this government has come out willingly to compensate. The bulk of the money has been embezzled. That's another story. But the president said, yes, we'll do this. And some people in Test have been compensated. Many have not been. In Acholi, many have not been. Okay. So the point here is, I think at the bare minimum, the role of the state in a situation of this nature is to help our people who have been ravaged by conflict, by war, to begin to regain their dignity, to stand on their own feet.
All right.
And therefore, compensation must not be limited to only one area.
And my very last question, Professor Ogenga Otunnu, do you plan to contest for any elective politics in this country?
Not at the moment. The door remains.
The ambition is there.
Not necessarily ambition to contest. I want, by the grace of God, to contribute in whichever way I can. Contesting for an office now is a difficult proposition, given what we have all seen now. There are people who went and asked for votes from ordinary people. Some of them actually won the elections and were elected. Others
Why don't you make it easier?
Okay.
If the people of Muchwini ask you...
No, but I think...
because that's a standard answer.
No, but the
when the people ask.
But the thing here is, there are people who won elections. There are those who didn't win election, but there are members of parliament, for example, who, and I do respect people who struggle to be elected. I am not suggesting that they're bad people, but some of their policies, their action, destroys that chamber.
What is going to be your parting shots tonight?
I am re-echoing perhaps the voices of those whose voices are not heard, that this country should work for all of us. We should find space to accommodate. There are moments in our own individual and collective experiences of atonement, moments of repentance that may allow us to see the humanity of the other. And if we can embrace the other, the way perhaps ordinary people in some parts of the country can do that, there is a possibility that we will at least bring to an end this tragic moment in our history.
Thank you very much. Professor Ogenga Otunnu.
Thank you very much for hosting me.
A man with such rare sense of humility despite his scholarly achievements. Could you say Professor Otunnu is a citizen of the world because he's been everywhere, he's seen it all, and yet he's grounded in that sense of humility that we rarely see, especially in this town. Good night, and God bless Uganda.